My dear friends, have you ever felt like your life is running, but you're not the one driving? You wake up, check your phone, rush to work, come back tired, scroll Instagram, and then sleep, only to repeat it again the next day? We call it modern life, but I call it modern madness. We have smart devices, but not so smart habits. We have faster connections, but weaker relationships. And we have more comfort, but less contentment, gratitude. Such a simple word, yet so deeply transformative. You see, my friends, most of us begin our mornings in a rush. The alarm goes off, we hit snooze once, twice, maybe even 3 times. Then we grab our phones, and before our feet even touch the ground, we are already comparing our lives with others. Someone bought a new car, someone is on a holiday, someone is getting married, someone got promoted, and suddenly, before the day even begins, we already feel like we are behind in life. But imagine starting your day differently. Imagine waking up and saying to yourself, "Wow, I have another day to live, to love, to laugh, to make a difference." Just this simple thought can shift the energy of your entire day. Gratitude is not about ignoring the problems of life. It is about choosing to focus on the blessings that we often take for granted. Let me share a story. One day I met a young man who was always complaining. My job is stressful, my salary is low, my boss is rude, my life is boring. So I asked him a simple question. If I take away everything you have right now, your job, your phone, your home, your health, and then I give them back to you one by one, how would you feel? He smiled and said, "I'd feel grateful." I said, "Exactly. Gratitude doesn't come from having a perfect life. It comes from realizing how perfect your life already is in many ways. Most of the time, we are not unhappy because our life is bad. We are unhappy because we forget how much good there already is." There is a famous saying, "What if you woke up tomorrow with only the things you thanked God for today?" Imagine that. Would you still have your family, your friends, your home, your health? Gratitude is the art of seeing miracles in everyday moments. Every morning, before you touch your phone or step out of bed, just take a few seconds to notice the simple gifts around you. The breath in your lungs. Do you know how many people struggle for that one breath in hospitals? The roof over your head. Do you know how many people sleep under the open sky, praying it doesn't rain tonight? The food on your table. Do you know how many children go to bed hungry? One of my favorite quotes says, "If you can't be thankful for what you have, be thankful for what you've escaped." Maybe you escaped an accident. Maybe you overcame an illness. Maybe you lost someone but learned to value love more deeply. Life is constantly giving us reasons to be grateful, but we have to slow down enough to notice them. You see, gratitude doesn't change the things we have. It changes the way we see the things we have. And that change in vision changes everything. It's like cleaning your glasses. The world doesn't become brighter. Your perspective does. There was once an old lady who was always cheerful. No matter what happened, she would smile and say, "Thank God." Someone asked her, "How can you be so happy all the time? Don't you have problems?" She said, "Of course I do. But I learned long ago that problems come and go. But my attitude decides whether I suffer or grow." That's the power of gratitude. It turns ordinary days into blessings, and routine work into joy. When you start your day with gratitude, you don't wait for good things to happen. You see the good things already happening. Let's make this practical. Tomorrow morning, when you wake up, instead of saying, "Oh no, I have to go to work," say, "Whoa, I get to go to work." Some people are praying for the opportunity you already have. Instead of saying, "I have to drop my kids to school," say, "I get to spend time with my children before the day begins." Instead of saying, "I have to cook," say, "I get to feed my family." Just by changing in into get to, your heart begins to open up. There's a beautiful story of a man who lost everything in a flood. His house, his shop, everything. People expected him to be broken, but instead he smiled and said, "I lost a lot, but I still have my life and my two hands. I can rebuild again." That's gratitude, not denying pain, but focusing on potential. Sometimes, when life gets tough, gratitude feels unnatural. How can we be grateful when we're struggling, when things aren't going our way? But gratitude is not a reaction, it's a decision. It's saying, even though I don't have everything I want, I'm thankful for everything I have. It's that mindset that turns your challenges into teachers. In fact, the gratitude is like a magnet. The more thankful you are, the more reasons life gives you to be thankful for. You'll start noticing small joys you never paid attention to before. A kind smile from a stranger, the taste of your favorite food, the warmth of sunlight on your face. One day, I was walking near a park and I saw a little boy with a broken toy. He was smiling, humming a song, enjoying himself. I asked, "Aren't you sad that your toy is broken?" He said, "No, uncle, I'm happy I still have the wheels. I can make it into a car." That's the purest form of gratitude. Seeing what's left, not what's lost. So, my friends, let us start our days with gratitude, not because life is perfect, but because we are blessed enough to live it. The richest person is not the one who has the most, but the one who needs the least. Every morning, before the rush begins, sit for a moment, take a deep breath. Smile, whisper softly to yourself, "Thank you. Thank you for this day, for this chance, for this life." And when you walk out of your home with that grateful heart, the world around you will start to look different. You'll attract positivity, you'll spread happiness, and most importantly, you'll feel peaceful inside, because when gratitude becomes your habit, happiness becomes your natural state. And that, my dear friends, is how you begin to completely change your life, one thankful morning at a time. Our mind is like a fertile garden. Whatever we plant in it will grow, whether it's beautiful flowers or wild weeds. But the problem, my friends, is that most of us are not aware of what we're planting. We wake up in the morning, and the first thing we do is scroll through social media. We see someone's vacation, someone's expensive car, someone's perfect looking life. And before we even brush our teeth, we've already poisoned our mind with comparison, envy, and dissatisfaction. We start the day not with inspiration, but with insecurity. Imagine this. If you start your morning by drinking a glass of dirty water, would you expect your body to stay healthy? Of course not. In the same way, if you start your morning by feeding your mind with negativity, how can you expect your day to be peaceful? What we feed our mind is far more important than what we feed our body. Every single day, we are bombarded with information, news, advertisements, gossip, drama. Most of it is designed not to uplift us, but to hook us. And as a result, our mind becomes restless, anxious, and distracted. That's why it's so important to consciously feed our mind with positivity. If you don't control what goes in, the world will decide it for you, and it won't always be good. Let me share a story. Once, two men were watching the same news channel. One became depressed and said, "The world is getting worse." The other said, "The world needs more good people. I should do something about it." Same news, same information, but two completely different minds. Why? Because one man had trained his mind to see opportunity, while the other had trained his mind to see only obstacles. Our mind is not naturally positive. It becomes positive through practice. Just like you can't build muscles by watching others exercise, you can't build a peaceful mind by just wishing for it. You have to train it daily. 10 minutes of reading something inspirational, listening to a motivational podcast, or reflecting on a spiritual thought can completely shift the energy of your day. It's like putting premium fuel into your mental engine. Think about how much time we give to external grooming, brushing our teeth, washing our face, dressing well. But how many minutes do we give to internal grooming? The dust that settles on your car can be seen, so you clean it. But what about the dust that settles on your mind? The dust of worry, doubt, anger, and fear? We ignore it. And then we wonder why our hearts feel heavy and our thoughts feel scattered. I remember once meeting a young professional who said, "Swamiji, I'm always stressed. My mind never stops." I asked him, "What do you listen to or read in the morning?" He said, "Mostly news and messages on my phone." I smiled and said, "If you begin your day by filling your mind with chaos, how can you expect peace to follow?" Just as a seed decides the fruit, the first thought of your day decides its direction. If you want to have a calm, focused, and joyful life, start by choosing your morning input wisely. Instead of social media, read a few pages of a good book, something that uplifts your soul. Listen to a podcast that motivates you. Spend a few minutes in silence, prayer, or reflection. It doesn't have to be long. Even 10 minutes of positivity can reprogram your mindset for the entire day. You see, the mind is like a sponge. It absorbs whatever it's exposed to. If you surround yourself with negativity, criticism, and complaints, you'll naturally start thinking that way. But if you surround yourself with positivity, kindness, and wisdom, your thoughts begin to reflect that energy. That's why it's said, you become what you consume, not just with food, but with thoughts. There's an old story of two wolves inside every person. One represents negativity, anger, and greed. The other represents peace, love, and wisdom. Which one wins? The one you feed more. Every time you choose to watch something toxic, engage in gossip, or complain, you're feeding the negative wolf. But every time you choose to be kind, to read something uplifting, to appreciate life, you're feeding the positive one. Let me give you a simple example from daily life. Have you ever noticed how one negative comment from someone can spoil your whole day? Maybe someone says, "You look tired today," and suddenly your mind keeps repeating it. Maybe I do look bad. Maybe I'm not doing enough. That's because our mind is sensitive. It holds on to negativity more easily than positivity. That's why we have to consciously give it more positive input to balance out the noise. When you start feeding your mind with uplifting content, something magical happens. You begin to handle stress better. You start to respond instead of react. You find joy in small things. You begin to focus more on solutions than on problems. Life doesn't necessarily get easier, but you get stronger. I once met an old man who had the habit of reading one page of an inspirational book every morning for 40 years. I asked him, "What difference did it make?" He said, "When you start your day with light, the darkness doesn't scare you anymore." That line stayed with me forever. It's true, the world outside can be unpredictable, but the light you build within through positive feeding will guide you through every storm. So, my dear friends, don't let your mind become a garbage bin for others' negativity. Be selective about what you allow inside. Read, listen, and watch things that make you grow. Spend time with people who inspire you, not drain you. Talk about ideas, not gossip. Fill your inner world with so much positivity that no outer chaos can shake your peace. Every day, feed your mind something nourishing, just as you feed your body breakfast. Because if you don't feed it with good thoughts, it will survive on junk thoughts. And just like junk food harms the body, junk thoughts harm the soul. So tomorrow morning, before you touch your phone, touch your heart. Remind yourself, today I choose to feed my mind with peace, love, and inspiration. Because what you feed your mind will shape your life. A healthy mind creates a happy life, and that begins with the simple habit of feeding it right. In today's fast-paced world, we have become experts at correcting others, but amateurs at connecting with them. We are quick to point out what's wrong, but slow to understand what's going on inside someone's heart. We correct our children, our friends, our colleagues, even strangers. But how often do we pause to connect before we correct? You see, connection is not just about communication, it's about compassion. It's not about talking more, it's about listening better. We all have this natural tendency to fix things. When someone shares their problem, our mind immediately says, "I have a solution," but not everyone wants a solution. Sometimes they just want understanding. There's a difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is done by the ears, but listening is done by the heart. When we truly listen, without judgment or interruption, we create a space where people feel seen, heard, and valued. Let me share a story. A young boy once came home from school and told his father, "Dad, I failed my math test." The father, trying to teach him responsibility, immediately said, "See, you don't study enough. You waste too much time on games." The boy's eyes filled with tears, and he walked away quietly. Later that night, the father found a note on the boy's table that said, "Dad, I didn't fail because I didn't study. I failed because I couldn't see the board properly, but I was afraid to tell you." The father realized he had corrected his son before connecting with him. And in doing so, he missed the truth. This happens in so many relationships. A husband corrects his wife before understanding her stress. A boss scolds an employee without realizing what they are going through. A friend gives advice without listening to the pain behind the words. We want to be right more than we want to be kind. But connection comes before correction, always. Because when people feel loved, they listen. When they feel judged, they defend. Think about your own life. When someone corrects you harshly, do you feel inspired to change, or do you feel attacked? Most people don't resist correction, they resist the way it's given. If correction feels like criticism, it closes hearts. But if correction comes from care, it opens them. That's why emotional connection is so important. It creates the trust that allows truth to be heard. There's a simple secret: people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. You can have the best advice in the world, but if your tone lacks empathy, your words will fall flat. But even if your advice is simple, if it comes from a place of love, it can heal hearts. Let's take a real life example. Imagine a teacher in a classroom. One student constantly misbehaves. Most teachers would scold or punish him. But a wise teacher takes him aside and asks, "What's troubling you?" The boy bursts into tears and says, "My parents fight every night and I can't sleep." The teacher gently says, "I understand. You're not a bad kid. You're just going through a tough time." That small moment of connection transforms everything. The boy starts respecting the teacher, studying harder, and behaving better, not because he was punished, but because he was understood. This is true in every relationship, whether at home, at work, or in society. We need more understanding hearts and fewer judging mouths. We need to listen, not to reply, but to relate. Every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Maybe the rude colleague is carrying financial stress. Maybe the moody friend is battling anxiety. Maybe the quiet child is simply waiting for someone to notice their silence. When you connect with love, you give others the courage to open up. There's a beautiful practice I often recommend: the pause principle. Before reacting or correcting, just pause and ask yourself, am I trying to prove a point or build a relationship? Most of the time, our ego wants to be right, but love wants to make things right. The pause allows your compassion to take charge before your anger does. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. Sometimes, even silence can be the deepest form of connection. When someone is hurting, you don't need to say much. Just sitting beside them, offering your presence, can speak louder than 1,000 words. The greatest healing often happens not through advice but through attention. Let me share a touching real life story. A woman once visited a hospice to volunteer. She sat beside an old man who hadn't spoken to anyone for days. She didn't try to cheer him up or ask questions. She simply sat quietly, holding his hand. After a few minutes, he whispered, "You remind me of my daughter. She used to hold my hand the same way." Tears rolled down his cheeks. That day, she didn't just visit a patient, she connected with a soul. Connection is not about how much time you spend with someone, it's about how much of yourself you give when you are with them. 1 minute of genuine attention can mean more than hours of distracted presence. Put down your phone when your child is speaking. Look into their eyes, listen to their stories, even if they're about cartoons or games. For them, that's their world. And if you care enough to enter it, they'll trust you enough to open up later when the real problems come. Even in the workplace, connection is the foundation of leadership. A boss who only corrects creates fear, but a leader who connects creates loyalty. People don't work for companies, they work for people. When employees feel valued, they give their best. When they feel unappreciated, they withdraw their hearts long before they quit their jobs. So, my friends, let's learn to connect before we correct. Let's listen before we lecture. Let's understand before we advise. Because every relationship, whether personal or professional, blossoms when there's emotional safety. When people feel loved more than they feel judged. Life is too short to win arguments and lose hearts. Speak to heal, not to hurt. Listen to understand, not to respond. And remember, a single moment of genuine connection can change someone's entire day, sometimes even their entire life. When you start practicing this habit, you'll notice something magical. Your relationships will become deeper. Your home will feel warmer, and your presence will become peaceful. Because when you connect with others from the heart, you also connect with the divine part of yourself. And that connection, my dear friends, is where real happiness begins. Service, such a beautiful word, and yet so misunderstood in our busy, self-centered world. When people hear the word service, they often imagine big acts of charity, donating large sums of money, building hospitals, feeding hundreds of people. And yes, those are wonderful things. But true service is not measured by S size. It's measured by sincerity. Real service is not about doing something grand in front of the world. It's about doing something good, even when no one is watching. Every day gives us countless chances to serve. But because we think service means something huge, we miss those small opportunities that could bring light to someone's day. Sometimes a kind word is service. A smile is service. Holding the door open for someone, helping your colleague at work, listening to a friend who's sad, all of these are forms of service. You don't need wealth to serve, you just need a willing heart. I once met a young man who said, "Swamiji, I want to serve society, but I don't have money." I smiled and said, "My friend, you don't need money to serve, you need mindfulness. You can serve with your time, your skills, your words, and even your presence. When you smile at someone who looks tired, you may never know how deeply that smile can affect them. Sometimes that smile is the only sunshine they see that day." There's a story I love about a poor farmer. One day, his cow fell into a ditch. A passing traveler saw him struggling and helped him pull the cow out. The farmer said, "I have nothing to repay you with." The traveler smiled and said, "Then repay me by helping the next person who needs you." That simple idea became a movement. Pay it forward. You see, kindness is contagious. One act of service inspires another, and before we know it, a chain of goodness is born. Service doesn't always mean doing something for others far away. It often begins at home. Help your parents without them asking. Be patient with your children. Appreciate your spouse for their efforts. These are small acts, but they are sacred when done with love. Sometimes, people go out into the world to serve strangers, but forget to serve the ones who raised them, loved them, and sacrificed for them. Real spirituality begins not in temples, but in the heart, and it expresses itself through kindness at home first. There's a deep truth in this. When you serve others, you're actually serving yourself. Because in that moment of selfless giving, Your ego melts away. You forget your worries, your insecurities, your little problems. You become part of something bigger, an instrument of goodness. That's why serving others brings such peace. It takes you from what can I get to what can I give. And when that shift happens, life itself feels lighter, more meaningful, and more joyful. I remember visiting an old age home once. There was a man there, around 80 years old, sitting quietly by the window. When I sat beside him, he said softly, "No one visits me anymore. My children are busy with their lives." I just listened, holding his hand. When I got up to leave, he looked at me with tears in his eyes and said, "Thank you for giving me your time." It struck me deeply. I didn't give him money. I didn't solve his problems. I just gave him a few minutes of attention, and to him, that was priceless. Sometimes, service is not about changing someone's life. It's about reminding them that they still matter. One of the greatest forms of service is helping people feel seen, valued, and loved. In today's digital age, everyone is connected, but very few feel truly cared for. We scroll endlessly, we like, we comment, but how often do we truly listen? Sometimes, sending a thoughtful message, asking someone how they really are, or just being present without distraction. These small gestures can make a world of difference. You see, life is not about how much we accumulate, it's about how much we contribute. The richest person is not the one who has the most, but the one who gives the most. And giving doesn't always mean material things. You can give encouragement, forgiveness, laughter, or wisdom. Even giving someone the benefit of the doubt is an act of kindness. Let me tell you another story. A man was rushing to work one morning when he saw a street sweeper cleaning the road. He was in a hurry but decided to stop and say, "Thank you for keeping our city clean." The sweeper looked up in surprise and smiled. Later, that man said it was one of the best moments of his day. It cost him nothing, just a few seconds and a kind heart. That's the beauty of service. It uplifts both the giver and the receiver. When we serve, we rise above our own little circle of me and mine. We begin to see everyone as a reflection of ourselves. A wise person once said, "The hands that help are holier than the lips that pray." Prayers are powerful, yes, but when your prayer becomes an action of love, it becomes divine. Real spirituality is not just about chanting or rituals. It's about compassion in action. Even in nature, we can see this spirit of service. The sun shines selflessly every day, giving warmth and light to all. It never asks for recognition. The trees give fruits and shade without expecting anything in return. The river flows tirelessly, quenching the thirst of every creature along its path. That's what we can learn: to give without expecting, to love without condition, to serve without pride. When you start serving others, something beautiful happens inside you. Your heart becomes softer, your thoughts become purer, and your life becomes more peaceful. You begin to realize that the purpose of life is not to be important, but to be useful. Even if you can brighten just one person's day, you've lived meaningfully. So, don't wait for the perfect moment or the perfect opportunity. Start small, start today. Help someone cross the street. Compliment a stranger. Offer to carry someone's bag. Volunteer your time. Speak kindly. And do it not for praise, not for recognition, but because it's who you are. Service is not a duty, it's a privilege. It's a way of saying thank you to life for all its blessings. And remember, a candle loses nothing by lighting another candle. In fact, the more candles it lights, the brighter the room becomes. That's the power of service. When you serve, you don't just change someone else's day, you change your own heart. And in that transformation lies the true beauty of being human. Every night, before you go to sleep, your body might be tired, but your mind is still running, replaying moments, rethinking conversations, regretting what went wrong, worrying about what might go wrong tomorrow. You lie there scrolling through your phone, distracting yourself until you finally drift off to sleep. But have you ever tried ending your day not with distraction, but with reflection? Reflection is not about judging yourself, it's about understanding yourself. It's the gentle art of learning from your own life before life has to teach you the hard way. Most of us live our days on autopilot. We go through so many experiences, meet so many people, feel so many emotions, but we rarely pause to process them. And when we don't reflect, we repeat the same mistakes, the same arguments, the same frustrations. Reflection is what transforms experience into wisdom. Without it, days pass. With it, we grow. Imagine this: at the end of every day, you take 5 quiet minutes just for yourself. No phone, no noise, no distractions. You sit, close your eyes, and ask yourself a few simple questions. What did I learn today? What made me happy today? What can I do better tomorrow? That small act can completely change the way you see your life. You start noticing patterns, the things that bring you joy, the habits that drain you, the words that hurt others, the choices that help you grow. There's a beautiful saying: an unexamined life is like reading a book without understanding its meaning. We live in such a rush that we forget to look back and learn. Reflection is like looking into a mirror, not to criticize, but to see clearly. When you look at yourself with honesty and compassion, you start to understand who you really are beneath the noise of the world. Let me share a simple story. There was once a man who worked as a driver. Every evening, when he came home, he would spend 5 minutes sitting quietly under a tree before going inside. One day, his neighbor asked, "Why do you sit there every day?" The man smiled and said, "Before I enter my home, I hang all my worries from work on this tree. I reflect for a few minutes, leave them there, and then go in to greet my family with peace. In the morning, when I return, I take only a few back. Because after reflecting, I realize most of them were not worth carrying." That's the power of reflection. It helps you put your thoughts in order and your heart at peace. We carry so many burdens simply because we don't pause to process them. Reflection is like cleaning your mind every night. Just as you wouldn't go to bed without washing your face, don't go to bed without washing your thoughts. Sometimes, reflection reveals our mistakes, and that can feel uncomfortable. But that discomfort is growth knocking at your door. When you reflect, you start seeing your role in every situation. Instead of blaming others, you start asking, "What could I have done differently?" And that shift from blame to responsibility is what builds character. Every night gives you a new chance to restart, to realign, to become a slightly better version of yourself. You see, reflection isn't just about fixing what went wrong, It's also about appreciating what went right. Maybe you helped someone today, maybe you stayed calm in a stressful moment, maybe you made someone smile. Recognizing your small victories strengthens your confidence and gratitude. We often focus only on our failures, but reflection helps us see the beauty in our effort, the goodness in our heart, and the blessings we often overlook. Think about your phone. Every night you plug it in to recharge, right? What about your mind? What about your soul? Reflection is how you recharge spiritually. It allows you to release the clutter of the day, forgive yourself for your mistakes, and prepare for a better tomorrow. Without it, your mental battery stays drained. No wonder people wake up tired, even after 8 hours of sleep. I once met a young woman who said, "Swamiji, I feel like I'm stuck in the same cycle every day." I asked, "Do you ever sit quietly and think about your day?" She said, "No, I'm too tired for that." I smiled and said, "Then life will keep repeating the same lessons until you learn them." The next week, she started a small habit, writing 3 lines in a notebook every night, one thing she learned, one thing she was grateful for, and one thing she'd do better tomorrow. A few weeks later, she came back glowing. "I feel lighter," she said, "and more aware of myself." That's the magic of reflection. It gives clarity where there was confusion and peace where there was pressure. In our world, people chase success, money, and recognition. But very few chase understanding. Reflection is the bridge between what happens to you and what you become from it. It's what turns pain into purpose and failure into fuel. When you reflect daily, you stop living reactively and start living consciously. You begin to respond to life instead of just surviving it. Sometimes, before sleeping, you might feel regret for things you said or didn't say, actions you took or avoided. Instead of letting that guilt drown you, reflect on it with kindness. Tell yourself, "I'm learning, I'm growing." Because reflection is not about perfection, it's about progress. It teaches you to forgive others and also to forgive yourself. There's a quote that says, "Every night, turn your worries into lessons and your lessons into peace." Isn't that beautiful? When you end your day with reflection, you start your next one with intention. You don't wake up feeling lost or anxious because you've already made peace with yesterday. So, before you fall asleep tonight, put away your phone, sit for a few minutes in silence, revisit your day not as a critic, but as a student. What did this day teach you? Who touched your heart? What mistake can you turn into a lesson? And most importantly, what can you thank life for today? Because every day may not be perfect, but every day holds a piece of wisdom waiting to be discovered. When reflection becomes your habit, your life becomes your teacher. You no longer need to wait for big moments to learn. Every small event becomes a classroom. You'll notice your awareness deepening, your relationships improving, and your peace growing. And as you close your eyes at night, you'll sleep not with regret, but with gratitude, knowing that today you learned, you loved, and you lived a little better than yesterday. That's the silent miracle of reflection. It doesn't just change your night, it transforms your entire life. Perfection is a beautiful illusion that many of us spend our lives chasing. The perfect body, the perfect relationship, the perfect job, the perfect life. But the truth, my friends, is that perfection doesn't exist in the human experience. Life was never meant to be perfect, it was meant to be progressive. The seed doesn't become a tree overnight, and yet we expect ourselves to bloom instantly. We forget that everything valuable takes time, patience, and continuous effort. The key is not to seek perfection, but to seek progress. When you focus on progress, every day becomes meaningful. Even small steps forward are victories. But when you focus on perfection, no matter how much you achieve, it never feels enough. You'll always find something missing, something imperfect. And that constant dissatisfaction steals the joy of living. Think about how we learn to walk as children. No baby ever gets it right the first time. They stumble, they fall, they cry, and then they try again. And every fall teaches them balance. Every attempt makes them stronger. The baby doesn't think, "Oh, I failed, I'll never walk again." It simply gets up and keeps going. That's progress. That's how growth works. But as adults, we become so afraid of failing that we stop trying. We want our journey to be smooth and flawless, forgetting that even the road to success is paved with mistakes. Once, I met a young artist who showed me his paintings. They were beautiful, but he was frowning. I asked, "Why are you unhappy?" He said, "I can see so many imperfections in my work." I smiled and said, "That's good. It means you're growing. The day you stop seeing your flaws, your progress will stop too." Perfection may look good from a distance, but progress feels good from within. In life, the pursuit of perfection often becomes a source of anxiety. We become harsh critics of ourselves. We hesitate to take risks because we're afraid of not doing things perfectly. But here's the truth. Every expert was once a beginner, and every success story is filled with imperfect chapters. The most successful people in the world didn't wait for everything to be perfect before starting. They started, stumbled, learned, and improved along the way. Look at nature. Nothing is perfectly symmetrical, yet it's breathtakingly beautiful. The waves don't crash in a straight line, the mountains are uneven, and the trees grow in all directions. Still, everything has its own harmony. Why can't we see that same beauty in our own imperfections? Our flaws tell our story, our progress shows our courage, and our persistence reveals our strength. I remember a story about a potter. One day, a visitor came to his workshop and saw several clay pots drying in the sun. The visitor noticed that one pot had a small crack. He asked the potter, "Why don't you throw away this broken one?" The potter smiled and said, "This pot may be cracked, but when I pour water into it and place it near the plants, the drops that leak out nourish the soil along the way." The visitor was stunned. That cracked pot was still serving a purpose. Similarly, you may not be perfect, but your presence, your actions, and your journey still make a difference. Perfection is about comparison, comparing yourself to others or to some impossible ideal. Progress, on the other hand, is personal, comparing yourself only to who you were yesterday. Every time you choose to be a little more patient, a little more kind, a little more disciplined than yesterday, that's progress. And those small changes add up. A drop of water may seem insignificant, but when it keeps falling on a stone, even the hardest rock gives way. That's the quiet power of consistency. Let's take a simple example. Imagine someone who wants to start exercising. They decide, I'll go to the gym every day for 2 hours. They go for 2 days, then stop because it feels too hard. But another person starts by walking 10 minutes a day, just 10 minutes, but every day without fail. In a month, they increase it to 15. In 6 months, they're running marathons. Who do you think succeeded? The one who aimed for perfection and gave up, or the one who aimed for progress and stayed consistent? Life rewards persistence, not perfection. The same applies to personal growth. You don't need to meditate for an hour every day to find peace. Even 5 minutes of mindfulness daily can transform your mind. You don't have to read 50 books to become wise. One good idea applied consistently is worth more than 100 forgotten lessons. The secret is small, steady improvement, the habit of showing up every day, doing your best, learning from your mistakes, and trusting the process. Sometimes progress is invisible. You might not see changes immediately, but they're happening beneath the surface, just like a seed growing roots before sprouting. The challenge is to keep going even when results aren't visible. That's where faith comes in. Faith in your effort, faith in time, faith in yourself. We live in an age where everything is instant. Instant food, instant success stories, instant validation through likes and followers. But real growth doesn't happen instantly. The butterfly doesn't skip the cocoon. The flower doesn't bloom overnight. Progress takes patience, and that patience builds character. Perfection often comes from fear, the fear of judgment, the fear of not being enough. But progress comes from love, love for learning, love for growing, love for becoming the best version of yourself. So, let go of the pressure to be flawless. Embrace your journey with its ups and downs. Every mistake is a teacher. Every setback is a step forward. I once heard a wise person say, "You don't have to be the best. You just have to be better than yesterday." That one line can change your life. Because if you become 1% better each day, by the end of the year, you'll be 37 times better than when you started. Small progress may seem ordinary in the moment, but over time, it becomes extraordinary. So tonight, when you look in the mirror, don't ask, "Am I perfect?" Instead ask, "Did I make progress today? Did I learn something new? Did I grow a little stronger, kinder, wiser?" If yes, that's enough. That's everything. Because life is not about reaching some final state of perfection. It's about becoming, evolving, and continuously improving. When you start living with this mindset, you'll find peace in the process and joy in the journey. You'll stop waiting for perfect moments and start creating beautiful ones. And in that pursuit of progress, you'll discover something far more fulfilling than perfection. You'll discover purpose.